everyone. Welcome to the 611 Films podcast. I am your host, David Groves, and with me is my co-host,
Neil McCay.
There you go, Neil McCay. Here he
What's
is.
going on?
So yeah, guys, this is our first podcast. This is the 611 Films podcast. Again, I'm David Groves, and this is Neil McCay. We're both filmmakers, and we wanted to just start a podcast, talk about movies, talk about films, and all that stuff. And I think for this first episode, we're basically just gonna kind of give you our backstory and kind of where we came from, how we got into filmmaking, movies, and all that good stuff, and kind of where we're at to this day. It is now Oscar Sunday. It is the February 9th. The Oscars are actually earlier this year, I think, right? Like,
Yes.
used to be
Years back they used to be in
March.
March or something.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they it feels like they keep moving them earlier, and
Yeah.
earlier. But and we're gonna do I think a little follow on to this where we're gonna talk about what happened like after they're over tonight. On Monday or Tuesday we're gonna talk about kind of what happened and there's all kinds of stuff because I was very interested in like what happened at the Golden Globes and things like that. So, Ricky Gervais's monologue and, just who won and what's going on and the state of affairs and movies. And, these are the kinds of things that David and me were talking about, let's do in a podcast. And also fun stuff too. Like, oh, this director, what's your favorite 3 like movie scenes that they've done and things like just kind of fun stuff. So, that's kind of what this is going to be all about, I think.
I think we took a page from Alex Ferrari, who does the Indie Film Hustle podcast. It's a lot about low budget, micro budget filmmaking, how to make a movie, go out and just do it, kind of thing. And I mean, we've been doing this for quite a while. Not to give away our ages or anything like that, just yet. But that's kind of something we wanted to also, because we do have a couple movies of our own that are in post-production that are coming out pretty soon, and we'll get into all that stuff. But I think that's kind of what we're trying to do with this podcast is bring a little knowledge as far as indie low budget filmmaking, kind of just talk about directors themselves, because we're both film nerds, geeks, buffs, whatever you want to call us. And then topical stuff like what's happening in the industry, what's happening in Hollywood or the independent film scene, and what's going on with all that stuff. So I think that's why we wanted to do this. So it's not just one or the other. It's just going to be a mix of a bunch of different things. And
exactly.
As we get bigger and better with this whole thing, this is our first start into the podcasting world. And we'll figure out what works, what doesn't work, and all that good stuff. But I think like what we want to do today, or this very first podcast, is just kind of bring about like, hey, who are we? What have we done? How did we get to know each other? And what's going on? So I'll start with that. And again, I'm a big film buff. I've been that way my entire life. I thought I was going to be an actor as a younger child, thought I was going to go into being on screen, and then found in high school, I kind of I really gravitated towards like action films, really loved like Bruckheimer, Michael Bay, Tony Scott movies, Jackie Chan, Kung Fu, martial arts type stuff. So I really got into those types of movies when I was in high school and found, oh, well, I don't need to be on screen. I don't need to be Stallone or Van Damme or anything. I want to just make those types of movies. That's what I want to do. So that's sort of where I was in high school and just really loving movies. What about you?
So I saw Gremlins as a kid.
Yep.
And I was very, very, very young kid. That's one of the first movies I remember. And then I asked my mom, I was like, all right, who comes up with this? Like, she's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know, who creates Gremlins? Like what I just saw, like who did all that? And she's like, I guess the screenwriter, because they wrote the story. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I had no idea what the hell that meant. Everyone in my class was like, wants to be president or an astronaut. And I'm like, I want to be a screenwriter. And people were giving me funny looks, but
they had no idea what that meant.
I was like, what is that? It's like, I don't know. It's the person who creates movie things. And so, and then as I got older, into grade school and high school, I kind of had an interest in telling stories, writing and things like that. So it kind of never left me. But once I kind of got into my teenage years and then college, I realized, wait a minute, like I was actually more interested in not, I mean, I was interested in telling the story, but or writing the story, but bringing it to life. Like it was more so than just, oh, I always wanted to be, you know, a writer, like a Stephen King kind of thing, but more, no, I want to show you what I'm talking about and like bring, you know, all of these, you know, elements together. So I think it was sort of the interest was always in the movies and then the storytelling, but then it became more, oh, wait a minute, now I'm actually seeing how, you know, they do it. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was strange. Like I was never actually interested in, I mean, I always wanted to do acting and things in front of the camera to kind of just get a better sense of things, but I never really had the interest to, it was always like behind the scenes for me. Like you were saying you
Right.
wanted to be an actor at one point, but
Yeah, I did some school plays, or I did like
mm,
stuff in elementary school and things like that. And I don't know if I was ever a class clown of any kind of sorts. I was always kind of kept my head to the books and tried to do all that stuff and be the good kid. But hey, you want to play Santa Claus for this thing, and I ham it up for the most part. I found a way to get out of my introverted self. I think for the most part with that. So that's why I was kind of going into this idea of probably acting, but then found like, yeah, I think directing, directors, those were the big things. Because, we grew up in the age of Spielberg and Lucas and even the 80s, something with like John Hughes and all that stuff. And like I said, I really got into more of the behind the scenes and all that stuff with action films. So the 90s was kind of big for action films. Like it had, again, the rise of Michael Bay and Tony Scott and Ridley Scott and all those different things, like those guys. So I was just enamored by, ooh, they're the ones that are actually the puppet masters. They're the ones that are doing all these cool things on film and figuring it all out. Were you that way? Like, did you kind of get that sense in high school and all that stuff? Because I know you're a big like Kubrick fan. You love David. Like, he's a very you're very more into some of the weirder stuff.
oh yeah, yeah. I'd say if we were to kind of, yeah, that's kind of a good. I mean, you know, you're kind of on that side of the, you know, the action movies and stuff. And I mean, I don't want to necessarily say this defines us as filmmakers or anything like that. But
No,
I
no,
am definitely, and I mean, I love good action movie for sure. But I'm definitely more off the beaten path, and I appreciate more of the weirder side of things. You know, like you said, Kubrick and David Lynch and things like that. I don't know. I've always been drawn to the strange and the weird. I always think I was as a kid. I mean, a movie like Gremlins, I'm always into like the monster movies and the sci-fi
yeah,
dinosaurs, just the whole thing. So that was always kind of my thing. And I don't know when it kind of started, but I think at some point, you know, when I'm watching these movies, I'm just like, whoa, that's like an interesting choice. Like that's different. I've never seen somebody, you know, I don't know. And at the time I'm like, what is it? Like the way they held the camera, the way they framed it or lit it, or, you know, and it was just those different things. I mean, sometimes you know, watch TV shows and they all just kind of look the same, you know, it has that same lighting and that same setup.
sure, right.
You know, the only thing that's really different is like maybe the production design, like what you see in the background. But you know, you start looking at, you know, a movie, you know, by, I don't know, like a De Palma or Cronenberg or something like that, and you know, or David Lynch or Kubrick, and you're just like, wow, that looks different than what I'm used to seeing in, you know, I mean, when
In
you
regular
know,
old sitcom, like even as we were growing up, like sitcoms were always the same. It's a studio audience, it's a built
mhm,
set type of thing. But movies were more of that escapist too, and I think like when you go back to movies like from the '80s and even into the '90s, 2000s, I mean, genre wise, everything is so different. But I think we both have maybe not for rom coms. I don't know if either of us have ever really really gravitated to that type of genre, but how horror films, how action films, how dramas themselves, how Oscar type winning films, that
mhm,
stuff really kind of hooked us. And it could have
yeah,
been the acting in a drama, or it could have been, a Shawshank Redemption, I know is one of your favorites. It's also one of my
yeah.
favorite films.
Oh, for sure. And I wouldn't necessarily say. I mean, I definitely, you know, I mean, I would say I was very kind of maybe more narrow-minded, younger. But the older I get, the more I have an appreciation for other things. Like you were saying, rom-coms. I mean, if it's a good one, I mean, you know, I could get
Yeah,
down
I've
with
seen a
that. I
lot
mean,
of good ones. I don't
like
watch a ton of great ones or
yeah, I mean,
you
that's the
know.
thing. It's kind of one of those, you know, but like a genre that I never really had much interest in, but I have appreciation for if I see a good one is the westerns. You know, like it's just not kind of my bag. But I mean,
Sure.
then I finally saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I was like, wow, that's a fantastic movie. So, um, but then it's like, being a filmmaker, you kind of go, okay, well, what did they do differently that, why did they get me interested in something,
Yeah.
that I mean, like, I don't know, I'm just thinking Whiplash. That's a movie. Like, I could care less about drumming, but man, that movie hooked me, I mean, it's like
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So, um, and I think it was like you and I both just, as we got older, we were just like, okay, how did, what are these elements? What are these things, these storytelling devices? How do you hook people in? What makes good and bad? And I guess that kind of,
Right.
and we both had a similar experience with that, but we both went to the same college, George Mason University out in Virginia, and kind of made our film school education through their program.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. And to get into that a little bit, you're a couple years older than me. Again, I'm not going to say your vintage or your age or anything. Well, you guys will find out at some point. But you are a few years older than me. So how did you get into Mason and all that good stuff?
I applied. No, I'm kidding.
I
Um,
tried my best.
I applied to the college. They took me in. No, I was, I mean, God, I mean, this is early in my college career, so I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And, I think I was like undecided, and I'm looking at it was kind of, I think it was a sophomore, and I was like, all right, you gotta pick something, otherwise you're going to be wasting your time just taking, electives and who knows what. And then I saw they had a communication program, and they called it communication, not communications, like every other college. So weird,
Hmm.
but
Right.
um, they had a bunch of classes on there for video production and editing and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I can major in this and do all these requisite classes and things, but I could take these fun classes and maybe make a career out of this. Who knows? Because then you could start seeing like, oh yeah, you could. You don't necessarily have to be, you could use these skills not to be just a filmmaker, but you could go work for a TV station and do editing, or work in the studio, or so I was like, hey, maybe I can do something like that. And
Or like
um
me and just do wedding videos and bar mitzvah videos for years on end.
yeah, I mean, there you go.
Hey,
But
you gotta shoot and edit something. Might as well
it's
be, and weddings never go out of style. They're always gonna happen.
but yeah, but it was just, it was nuts though, because I'm looking at, and once I got into these classes, and I'm like going, wow, this is not just pie in the sky. Somebody's like, oh, I want to make a movie. I mean, there's like, you know skills that you have to learn, and know what you're doing, and to operate a camera, to put footage together, to even the other things, like I mentioned, production design, like setting up the background, and doing and
Yeah.
applying makeup for what looks good on film or TV versus what's going to look good for Halloween, and
Oh,
all of
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff. I mean, those are jobs, and those are people and stuff, that and those are skills, and you learn that, and you got a job, not necessarily in Hollywood. You could be anywhere doing that kind of things.
Mhm. No, no, yeah, totally. I was the same way. I have a little bit of a different. I mean, yeah, I got into Mason. My plan was actually to leave Mason maybe after a year. I never really told my parents. Like, yeah, they always knew I love movies, and that was a thing, and this or that. But I guess it turned into that, boomer generation, as they're calling it now. Like, okay, boomer, like, get a skill. Like, you want to do movies, cool, but you need a skill. You need something to like fall back on. So go to college and blah blah blah. Do the college thing. But I kept thinking to myself, okay, well, maybe I'll do a year, and then I could transfer out to the North Carolina School for the Arts. And for those that don't know, North Carolina School for the Arts, that's where Danny McBride came from. That's where, and the director David Gordon Green came from. They've worked together, obviously, with Eastbound and Down and a lot of other films. So I was thinking, okay, well, it's pretty close from where I lived. I came from Virginia Beach, and was thinking, okay, I'll do a year here, and then I'll just transfer out and go to a film school. And needless to say, I didn't do that. I went the full 4 years at George Mason. I had a really good time there. Joined a fraternity like you do, and had a good time. I had a really good time. But at the same time, like Neil said, found that they actually had a communication program and an English program for a minor. You could do a film and media minor. And we had two really cool professors, Peter Burnett, who passed away a few years ago, Cynthia Fuchs. and they both did different English classes on film theory or race and sci-fi and horror films or women in film or independent film or foreign language film. So while we were doing the communication thing with learning how to just operate a camera or do lighting or editing or things of that nature, you could also then go, and your next class would be in English, and you'd just be talking about movies for an hour and a half. And that was fun. I know you did a couple of those, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those classes were great too, because it wasn't just like, we're just going to talk about this movie and why we liked it and stuff. I mean, they really got you into the weeds with it, and they'd be like, okay, this particular scene, you're supposed to feel a certain way, and you're maybe supposed to identify with one character over the other. Why? How did they frame this shot? What do they make these characters look like in this particular scene? What do we know about them? It was just all about, the lighting and where things are going and how long you're lingering on one person or the other. And it was
Yeah.
just a lot of that stuff is fascinating. And, so that's like kind of, you take those concepts and apply it to the real world of like, okay, now I have that camera in my hand and I'm operating it. And it was like, so it really was like a film school education, because it's like, we're learning the
Yeah.
equipment, but we're learning the principles behind it. All the fun
Yeah.
stuff, like the film terms and things, like the, oh God, what's that lighting technique that they use in
Three
horror
point lighting.
movies?
3-point lighting is the basic, most basic lighting thing you could ever
Yeah.
do.
I admit that
Mise
one with
en
it's like a,
scène,
yeah,
Deus Ex
there's that,
Machina,
yeah, all that
there's all
stuff that
kinds
I'm
of,
like,
like, theater terms, film terms that people don't get. Back to one, or certain
but then
things like
again,
that.
you need to know that stuff, because if you're on a movie set and then people are talking the lingo and you're like, what is that? What's a C-47? And then
Little aside, people. I actually have a small little, like, it's a bathroom book. It's like one of these things. It's like film terminology or film lingo 101. It's a basic $5 Amazon book. Maybe it's on Amazon. Not sponsored, by the way, because we're not sponsored yet, but hopefully maybe sooner.
maybe soon.
But it's like it has all the lingo, like the martini shot. What's a martini shot, or what's a this, or what's a that? So they have it's basically an encyclopedia of all the film terms and film language. That again, you pick up more than likely if you're a PA on anything for at least a few months. Like you just start to pick that stuff up. But for people that aren't in a film school like we were, it was still just a 4-year college.
Mm.
We didn't get like film terminology.
Yeah,
It was
and that
more
really
about
is
that
that
video
is
class.
the film school is just doing it. I mean, there was
Right.
so many things we did, collectively between the two of us, at this school, but like going out and actually shooting something for real in the real world is kind of, that's where you really get, um, you know, the skills, because it's like everything else is just conjecture. It's just
Yeah,
it's not the
yeah. You
application.
can
It's just
watch a film all day. That doesn't mean you know how to make one.
yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So, so yeah, so Dave and me were at Mason, and we were a couple years apart, so we didn't really run in the same social circles necessarily while we were actually in school there. But we both worked at a multimedia lab that would rent out camera equipment and teach you how to use Photoshop and start a web page and things like that. And that's kind of where him and I intersected. And basically, he was looking to do a short movie. I was looking to do a short movie. Um, he had some equipment and some resources. I had some resources, and we just kind of pulled them all together. And that's kind of how we met and became friends, basically helping each other out on each other's movies, because it's not, that's the thing about movie making. It's not like, you can just pick up an acoustic guitar and go to a bar and sing and make some money, entertaining a crowd. I mean, this is like a very collaborative
Oh yeah, for sure.
thing. I mean, it
Yeah.
takes a lot of people to do it. I mean, you can't operate the camera and direct and act and write the story and compose the music and all of it yourself. I mean, you gotta at some point
Oh, no, and we
get
pride
some help.
ourselves on trying to be able to do pretty much everything if we can do it ourselves. I mean, again,
Right.
Neil and I come back from the background of like, again, we learn by doing, and we needed to write our own stuff, we needed to direct our own stuff, we had to produce our own stuff, we edit things our so yeah, we might not also then be doing music or costume design or things like that, but at the same time, we're both very we're all hands on deck with people that we need, but if I can do it, I'll just do it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's I think it's very useful to understand all of the facets of film production or TV production or what
Right.
have you.
Or yeah. Yeah.
It's if you can say, I don't know, that somebody else does that. It's like, I mean, okay, but I mean it would behoove you to learn what goes into, doing makeup, whether it's just, hey, they got to look good on camera, or hey, we're doing like some crazy effect on their face to make them look like a monster or something.
Right. Yeah.
Or just what goes into like music or the sound, and not just what you record, but how you manipulate it after the fact, and then the editing and just all of it. And um, I think both Dave and me are both like, we like all that stuff, like trying to know what's going on from everywhere, not just like, okay, that's all we are as directors, and that's all we got to worry about is
Right.
that,
And in this day and age too, you really can't be that way. I mean, anybody listening to us right now, whether you're 14, 15, 16 years old, or you're, 60 years old, it doesn't matter. In this day and age, you really can't, you're not anymore that like, I'm just the director. Sure, they're the outliers. Sure. But this day and age, if you're an actor, you need to be a writer. You also should probably learn how to edit or a little bit of the directing or behind the scenes or producing. If you're a director, you need to know producing and editing as well,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's empowering yourself. I mean, like you said with the acting, it's like, I know a lot of people, they'll write their own role for themselves, because it's like,
Sure.
no, but no, if nobody's casting you, cast yourself, and so that's very true. And the more the more you can empower yourself, and the more you can create opportunities for yourself, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting too as far as like camera work and stuff like that. Again, uh, you and I both learn at Mason how to operate a video camera. And with the DSLR revolution, and then coming in with Reds and Arri Alexas and all this stuff, we never look at ourselves like I'm a DP or I'm a cinematographer. But you give me a camera, I will know how to turn it on and find focus and get the color right and white balance it. And it might not look the prettiest, but it's going to get the job done. Like that's another thing. Like, I don't think like the technicalities sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, it's good to know everything and learn, but I think you and I both agree. Like, at least I'm speaking for myself. Yeah, I know how to turn a camera on. I don't know anything. Oh my God, somebody else does that. I didn't want to know what the camera's doing and all that other stuff, but I'm not good at doing it. So, and that's
Right.
fine. That's why.
Hey, the lighting of the scene to really make it pop or do that, sure, that takes cinematographers, directors of photography years to learn. And then, we have some of these guys that have been winning Oscars for years, and they go, I learned something new on every film set every single day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Nobody knows everything,
right.
and
Everybody says they learn something new all the time on every new set because it's always changing, personalities change, and all that stuff. So going back to like who we are and this idea of this first podcast and all that stuff. So yeah, as Neil was saying, so yeah, I was gearing up. I think I got out of college and then spent a year at the multimedia lab, and then started writing kind of a personal, like little short film, kind of about my high school, like love interest and this or that. And then Neil came in, and this guy, who I didn't know from Adam, was like, and here I am. And I was like, oh, cool. I have a job that I thought I was going to get. And then you actually took that
oh,
job, and that's how we met.
yeah,
Which is
yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, it was I was already I was actually living in Los Angeles, and I came back because it didn't really that's a whole other story. It didn't really work out. And I had previously worked at this multimedia lab that we mentioned before.
The Star Lab, yes.
Right. And then
Not
there
the
was a
Flash version of the Star Lab, people. It was just the Mason Star Lab, just.
and there was it wasn't there when I was there, but it was like a new position. It was kind of like a manager-ish supervisor role kind of thing. And I was basically the guy that was running the kind of the video end of things, that the lab just kind of offered me the job. And like Dave was kind of at the time like next in line for it. But because I moved back from LA, it was like kind of given to me. And then
Yeah.
It could have been, yeah, like a bad situation where we, I don't know, think you and I were like best friends right off the gate, right out of the gate. But I mean, it could have been, you know, like start of a grudge or something like that. And it
Yeah,
ended up being like,
exactly.
hey,
Right.
after a while, it was just like, it is what it is. And then, of course, I didn't, this is, I mean, we're talking about
And you
this
didn't
back
know about
then.
it, obviously,
Yeah,
yeah, you didn't
I
even know I was
wasn't
taking, like, maybe a job from someone else, but at the same time,
right.
then you got the job, and I was like, "Ah, I don't care, I'm trying to do my own thing and freelance and write my own short film," so it was like, "Alright," and I don't think we were actually best like, obviously, you didn't come in and, "Hey, let's be buddies," or anything, and I didn't do the same thing with you either, but it was sort of
Yeah.
that thing of, like, maybe we didn't talk for, like, 4 I think I had very minimal shifts where even you were around. I might have done because
Yeah, it
this
was.
lab was open till like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So sometimes I would just do like I was a mentor, which basically meant I would go in and hang out. So if any of the students had questions like, "Hey, how do I do this?" or "This isn't working," or "This isn't connecting right," you just help them out and go, "Okay, just plug in the camera this way and turn this setting on." So yeah, I don't think we even knew each other for a while.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Because I mean, I think like a year went by or something, and then it was sort of like I didn't even know you were trying to do a short, because I was
Right.
working on a script, and someone mentioned to me like, oh yeah, Dave's trying to do a short, and I think he's got a
Yeah.
camera or something, and he knows some people that can do X, Y, and
Oh
Z.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's
Um,
when I got the yeah, that's when so I was always buying cameras. Like I was fortunate enough to just say if I'm going to do this for real, I just need to have the gear. I'd rather have it than not, and then have to rent it or find it. And at the time, there was no share grids or kit splits or ways to rent gear, so you would just buy stuff. So I had the Canon cameras and all this, but
this
I
this
actually
was
had the
circa
Canon.
like
Yeah, this was
2003 or four
2003,
or something like
4.
that.
Yeah, 4-ish, 3,
So
4-ish.
this is long before like the Arri, Alexa, and
Oh, long before the Red, the
and the
Airy,
red, and
even
yeah, it's
Canon 5Ds and Mark IIs and the GX,
so
the GH5s, 4s. But it was yeah, it was like mini DV tape
yeah.
cameras.
So when you're talking about buying cameras, like it's not like you're buying these cameras now. It's like what would the cameras were a
Oh,
thousand or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
To I mean,
they're
it's not like these $500,000 cameras they have now with these crazy setups.
but no, it was actually the Panasonic DVX 100A
And that was
camera.
a big deal back then.
It was a huge deal. It
That was
actually shot
the
24p
24p, right?
progressive scan, so it mimicked frames per second. It mimicked film in a way, which is normally 23.976. But I was like, ooh. And we actually found that the like this low budget production company based out in New York started shooting with these things. They were getting high end actresses. They had Courtney Cox in November and Katie Holmes in Pieces of April. I
Oh,
mean, they
that
were
was shot on
shooting
that.
these low budget,
Oh,
yeah, low
I didn't
budget
know that.
things on the Panasonic. So then we did become friends, and we were like, oh, old chums, movie buffs, and talking movies, all this stuff. And I was like, hey, well, I have a camera. I want to do this short film in this summertime, and you're like, oh, I want to do my movie. Let's pull, like I said, we were like, let's pull the resources. So then you found Mary Lecter, who I was the acting teacher out there, and you knew her from. So she did the casting and all that, right?
Yeah, I took a class with her before I went, before I graduated and went to LA, and then when I came
Right,
back, and I was kind of pooling resources myself, and I kind of hit her up, and she kind of was able to get me, people that were in the theater departments or taking acting classes, or within Mason. Um, so I was able to like hold auditions and just have people that she basically did like the casting. I pretty much our casting for our two shorts, because she
right,
brought us all
yeah,
these people that kind of come and read for us and stuff. And then I was working a side gig for the city, doing like we would like record a concert for the 4th of July, that kind of thing. And there was a guy that was really good with cameras, and he was like, "Oh yeah, if you guys need camera help, I can be your DP, and I know how to light stuff." And so like I had him, and I was kind of like, "Hey, I can get us
right,
auditions, and
yeah,
we can. This guy is interested in like doing or being a DP for us and stuff. So it was kind of like that was like, hey, this is what I can bring to the table. And then Dave had the camera, and then between our friends and people that we knew with the school, like we had resources to help us do these things. So it just kind of
Mhm.
made sense. Like, all right, well, I'll help you do stuff, you help me do stuff, and that's kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean, and then in that process, I mean, it was kind of a more of a you know, like a, I don't know, like just helping each other out. But then it became like a friendship kind of thing. And that's when we would get into like, oh, we could start talking about, movies and trivia and just all of that stuff. And I
Right,
mean,
right.
and I mean, I'm gonna skip over a couple of things but I mean, I think that's why we were interested in doing the podcast, because it's like we as filmmakers can talk about the trials and tribulations of making movies. We can talk about the history and the appreciation of movies and like why things work, the current state of affairs, just
Oh, yeah,
all
for
the
sure.
different
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
So yeah, so that's kind of what it's, this like, I don't know, this ponderosa of things this podcast could be. And
yeah.
hope so
Well, hey,
hopefully.
we basically did that. We went and made these 2 short films. We actually screened them in, Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, kind of in Northern Virginia area for those that don't know. And then we had kind of a bug up our butt, which is like, all right, what do we do next? And obviously it was like, hey, let's just make a feature film. What obviously that should be next.
That's the next, yeah, that's the
We
next
have the
step.
gear, we have people, we have all these things, and who cares what these short films do? We sent them. I mean, I sent mine to like maybe like 6 or 7 festivals. It didn't get in, no biggie. It was not a big deal. Um, but yeah, but then the following year, after I guess, like, well, not even the following year, we actually started. We started. We did the screening. Correct me if I'm wrong. We did the screening in '05
It
in
was
February,
February, yeah.
right?
I
And
think
then
you were done with
June.
yours. The right time was done, I think, a few months before mine, though. Maybe, I mean, we premiered them at the same time, but I think
Yeah, but I
you
think
were done
like
shooting when
yeah,
I started
I'm
shooting, or something
basically
like that.
going in. Yeah, I'm jumping way ahead, man. I'm going from we did the '05 screening of the short films
Oh,
in
I know where you're
LA
going. But
area,
yeah, my point
and
is
then
that we
June.
were
Yeah,
in production like less than a year when, we were
yeah,
shooting the other ones. Like we were already, boom, it was like April or May of '05, and we are shooting 11, which is the feature.
right.
And then, yeah, that's like a whole podcast. We could talk about what we learned
Yeah,
from that.
that's
And,
another thing we can go into at some point. But yeah, we then did a feature all throughout that summer. Wrote, directed, produced, edited, all that good stuff. And then yeah, from there, uh, we'll get into 11, I'm sure, with other podcasts or talking about that
mm,
separately or whatever. But then what's the next step? Well, we're in the
then
Northern Virginia, DC area. So what else are we going to do other than political videos or weddings and things like that?
got to move to Hollywood.
Got to move to LA.
So, so we actually, Dave and me, and then our lead actor from that movie 11, all three of us moved out to LA and became roommates. And I don't know, this is the part where I think, because it did, like, I was only out there again for another year. We were all roommates, and then it didn't really work for
Right,
me because I had, some personal things going on. And so I moved back to
right.
Virginia. So I feel like there's going to be this big break. I mean, this was like what, 2008, and then it's kind of like
This
flash
was the
forward to.
worst. Like I don't. I always just bring it back to the housing crisis and the Great Recession that happened in 2008 because I was like, this was all going down right at that time, and we were in that bubble of the housing and this or that. Neil and I were actually living together for a little bit at a townhouse in Centerville, Virginia, and then Ryan, me and him, we were all like, all right, I guess it can't get any worse. We might as well go to LA now. So that summer of 2008, if you guys don't remember to that, I'll just say The Dark Knight came out in 2008, just so you know. So that's when we came out to Los Angeles. And yeah, we were there for about a year and the economy was terrible. There had been like I think it was the writer's strike had happened or there was an actor's strike also happening when we got there or something like that. But
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
there were a couple different LA
yeah,
like
because all these
union
movies were
strikes.
delayed and stuff to
Yeah,
come
like
out in
TV shows got
'09.
delayed or
Yeah, that's
canceled
right.
for a year or something. So So yeah, it was a pretty like yikes. This is a weird this is a weird time to be here because again, we're all three different people. Like I know you wanted to get kind of just a full time 9 to 5 type job. I was struggling because I was like, oh, I'm just going to jump into freelance because I've been doing freelance video work and shooting and editing stuff. And, Ryan is an actor. So, of course, he's just going to, he literally finds a restaurant job like 2 weeks into being here. So he was okay. He was fine.
Yeah,
But
it's like the cliche thing. Well, I mean, the first time I was in LA, I was working at a restaurant too. So it's that whole stereotypical. You're a struggling artist in Los Angeles. You probably
right.
work at a restaurant.
Yeah,
It's kind
exactly.
of true, but
Yeah, that how it
um,
goes. I mean, that there was no like doing Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or Grubhub, like that type of stuff, which I think a lot of actors and people are doing now these days.
the Dark
As-
Ages when the Dark Knight came out. No,
yeah,
I don't
those
know.
dark those
It is
dark
it is
times when it was just
it
like I
is
just need a
funny looking
job,
back
a nine
on.
to five type job.
It is funny looking back on like how different things were, and it was only 12 years ago, 11, 12 years
Yeah,
ago.
12 years ago. 12 years
Um,
ago. So
so I think
yeah,
so.
and yeah, and you had some personal things. You had to go back to Virginia, so then we brought in another roommate, and me and Ryan stayed here. You were out there for quite a while, and we were always in communication. I'd come and hang out if I was ever in Virginia. I'd come hang out with you, and we'd go grab some beers and do it up for the weekend, this, that, or the other, and I think it was one weekend where I said, "Hey, man, I'm just gonna write a movie. I'm just gonna write something I can shoot like next year or something like that."
Mhm.
I was really bold or brazen about it. Probably
Yeah,
from
yeah, you were,
that's
yeah, you kind of just started as like, hey, let's just write something. I think you were kind of clued me into your plan a little bit later, but it was sort of like, I don't know, not I don't want to say like a bet or something, but it was kind of like, let's give ourselves, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months or something. I'll write something brand new, something we've never been working on before, just a totally new idea. And then we'll trade scripts and then comment on them or whatever. So, and this
yeah,
was, I don't know, this was more recently. This was a few years back, so it was sort of, we're kind of fast forwarding from like 2008 to, I don't know, whatever, 2016 ish or
yeah. We'll
something
get
like
into all
that.
that stuff. You guys will figure.
But
You'll
it's
know
sort of
who we
like,
are and all
I
that
think it
stuff.
was sort of like our kind of, in our own respective ways, our kind of filmmaking things kind of got stagnant. Like we weren't really, so this was kind of our, okay, well, we got to do something. Right. And then we wrote the scripts, and then your script, you ended up making a movie that would you shoot that into 2018, and you just finished it just a few months
It
ago.
was It was December of 2017, so right
Oh,
before
that's right, 2017.
2018 actually hit. Yeah, correct.
And then yeah, and this movie's Psychos and Socios,
Yeah.
which is great, and I just saw it. It was premiered in December, so just not even 2 months ago. And yeah, and then the more details on that, it's going to be coming out. I'll let you talk about that, coming out in
Yeah,
March.
soonish.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
soon, yeah, might as well throw that out there. And then the script that I wrote is something that I'm still working on. I think it's got a lot of promise, but I ended up doing something a little different. And that movie we shot, and Dave was a producer on that. Out and I live in Austin, Texas. We shot that last summer in August, and that is going to be out. Because I'm a few months behind on this one. Probably, I don't know. I don't know. I'm further along, but it's probably later this year. It'll be
Yeah.
in the stages of distribution.
But
But
actually, let's go backwards just a little bit. I've stayed in LA. I've been in LA since the 2008. You were actually in Northern Virginia for quite a while after you left LA from us and the 2009 ish area. But then I guess yeah, a few years ago you got the bug of like I don't want to be in Northern Virginia or I don't want to be here anymore. So I don't know if you want to like just
yeah.
expound on that a little bit.
Oh no, that's true. Yeah, I just kind of skipped from Virginia to Austin, but yeah, I was yeah, it was a few years ago. I didn't. I was kind of like, what am I really doing? And I mean, the Washington D.C. area is my home, always will be, but it's kind of like not really where I felt like I wanted to be, I guess, at the time. So, it was like where I wanted to go someplace warmer. Maybe
Yeah.
yeah, just a lot of things. So, and then I saw Austin was a kind of a possibility because I could do kind of a work transfer out there because there was a presence at the job that I was working at the time in Central Texas, And I just always remember hearing about, how cool and hip of a town Austin was. And it's always an independent, filmmaker friendly town. I mean, it's musicians and just all kinds
Yeah.
of creative people
Keep Austin
from
weird, baby. Right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's the
there you
motto.
go. I mean, you had like people like Richard Linklater and Robert Rodriguez, that kind of put Austin on the map in the '90s as far as like independent films. And I kind of realized, I think that's probably a place that I always should have gone to versus LA, because LA is just that's big time and stuff. And I always I think the older I got, the more I realized I kind of like doing things smaller and on my own terms. And
Hmm.
you kind of have more control when you're on an indie versus like like an Avengers movie. I mean, there's so many moving parts with something like that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
so I don't know. Yeah, just Austin was kind of the light bulb went off, and I was like, maybe that's what I'll do. And then of course I was talking to Dave at the time about the scripts and maybe doing a movie, because like you said, I got the bug back. Like it was always something. I had this several years in Northern Virginia where I just wasn't doing movie stuff, and I kind of was realized like why. I mean, it's always been kind of that thing, that
Yeah, it was sort of like that complacency thing. Like, I guess, like, I don't know. And people can get it here in LA. If you're a writer, director, musician, actor, I don't care who you are, there will be a time when you get married or you have a kid or you do, like, if things aren't like popping off and this or that, like you start to get really complacent. Like, hey, the job just pays my bills, and I'll write a script when I want to write a script, or I'll work towards getting that manager or agent at some point. I mean, I don't know, but everybody gets this. I mean, it's like that LA blues. I don't know. I think people have said this before, and I've been like, I don't know what that means. It's that I've been here for so long, or like at whatever time they think it is. It could be 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. It's that LA. It's I just now live here and making movies, I guess, or being a big time actor, or doing this, that, or the other. It just starts to kind of fade. And I didn't want that to fade with you, because I was always like, dude, I think you're really talented. I think you've got some really cool, interesting stories. Well, again, guys, we're going to get into like, other scripts or things that we've talked about, and our backstory in this. But this was something that I really wanted you to like really find again, because I really thought that you had it. You have that thing.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I've taught. I mean, I've always said to Dave before, it's like, I mean, I'm very glad that kind of things went, maybe not, it took so long to get the bug back, or what have you, but just the way things kind of worked out. And it's like, hey, now we both got feature like movies coming
Yeah.
out soon, and now we're doing a podcast. And I mean, things are happening, and it's it's good, and it's not, it's never too late. I mean, if you're interested in something, you got a passion for something, it never really leaves you. So, and it's not like you just
Right.
I mean, it's not exactly like riding a bike either. I mean, you got to kind of go back and shake off the rust. But I mean, it's never too late to get
Yeah.
back into things, and that's I'm glad. However it works, I mean, I wish I was in the position now like 10 years ago, but I mean, however it happens, it happens. Sometimes everything's a learning experience. Sometimes you need the time away to realize how much you loved it to begin with. But
Hmm. And I think you did. I mean, hey guys, we were in the hottest months of Austin, Texas in August. No AC, shooting inside house, not outside even, just where like maybe there's a breeze here or there. And you commanded that set, and it was really cool. Like, and it takes that dedication. It takes that kind of thing of like, I wrote and directed this movie. It's pretty badass.
oh yeah, yeah. We got, and we got plenty of time to talk about
Plenty of
all
time to
those
talk
things,
about
and
that. So
just all
yeah,
the things we
yeah,
learned. But
yeah, because it's hitting that time. Oscars are about to start. We're gonna watch the Oscars. We're gonna talk about the Oscars in a couple days. Try to get this thing out to you guys with that. So I think, yeah, unless you got anything else, man, I think we should just wrap this one up. And of course, we'll get
yeah,
more into
we
our
got
backstories
plenty
and all
more,
crazy stuff.
plenty more
And
things.
talking about directors, talking about screenwriting, producing, editing, all this crazy stuff that we've been through. And this was just kind of our like really quick, like 45 minutes. Let's just get us into us and the 611 Films podcast.
Yeah,
So,
kind of finding our sea legs,
right,
kind of
exactly.
we're figuring out our,
Yeah.
what we're doing here, and well, it'll be a well-oiled machine soon.
Yeah, and I'd love to say, like, hey, find us on Spotify and iTunes and all the podcast. It's not up there yet, but if you find this, it is obviously there, and we figured it out. We haven't figured it out just yet, but
Soon,
yeah,
soon.
it's good.
But
All right, man. You got anything else you want to like dive
now look,
into, or just
now
let's just
look,
go watch the Oscars
yeah,
and just see
watch
see who
Oscars.
wins?
Look out for part 2 where we talk about whatever crazy stuff happens here in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah,
What? So
yeah.
start at 8 or
It
I'm
starts
on
at 8 Eastern time, so yeah.
8
So
Eastern
yeah,
time.
it's already started, but we've got it on record. I've got it on
Oh,
record. I'm not doing anything until like it's an hour and in, so I can just skip commercials. I don't want to watch
gotcha. Already started. Okay.
it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, well
Oh, yeah,
that's
man.
it. So,
That's it, guys.
see you on the next one.